House prices have increased by 15.3% in February, and CEO figures show the residential property price index rose by 13.5% in Dublin and 16.8% outside of Dublin within the past 12 months. So there is not a day goes by here on the show where we receive a call from a person or a couple frustrated at trying to bid for a house and the price goes up, up and up. Well, to discuss the housing market at present and also some tips if you were thinking of buying or indeed selling, I'm joined by Majella Galvin, a chartered estate agent and valuer at DMG Galvin in Bandon. Good morning to you, Majella.
Good morning, JohnPaul.
And thanks for joining us. I mean, the housing market makes the news itself these days with the prices increasing. But for the ordinary person, Majella, looking to buy, it is tough. I mean, first of all, looking ahead for the rest of 2022, demand is so high. Is it hard to see any reduction in pricing for the rest of the year ahead?
Well, I suppose you hit the ball in the head there, JohnPaul. Demand is so high, and unfortunately, although supply has increased a bit, it's still very, very low. I suppose that there is a lot of cash in the market, and people have had a lot of savings over the COVID. So all of this is fueling prices.
And when you mention people had cash, is that for deposits, or are we seeing an increase in cash buyers?
We're seeing an increase in buyers.
Okay, so that's increasing demand even more, because we're hearing from people who want to find their dream home and they put in an offer and the price increases and they lose out. And this is happening for them for a number of houses they are bidding on. I mean, are you seeing a lot of that at the moment as well?
Yes, and the main issue there really, as I say, goes back to the shortage of supply. And also, I think, rising inflation is causing the construction costs to go up. So, I know that there is supply will increase a bit this year, but it's nowhere near what we'll expect to meet demand.
And with the demand so high, I mean, I would see houses for sale in where I live, and you'd see the for sale sign go up, and then by the Friday it would be sold or sale agreed at least. Anyhow, are properties selling a lot faster than because of all of these factors combined?
Absolutely. I suppose the easiest thing really is once you put the property in the market, the queries flood in. And I suppose the important things for buyers really is that they really stick to their budget. And that goes back, I always think, to making a list of their wants and their needs. And I say wants and needs because in this market, we all have things we want, but we have to really prioritise what we need, as in the minimum number of bedrooms, and it also goes back to when you find the right property, to go in with a strong offer and have your paperwork, have your proof of funds ready.
Yeah, because for many people, when they get their mortgage approval, it usually will last for 6 months and people can kind of forget. And then when they see their dream home, they haven't renewed that offer from whatever bank they're with or going with for a mortgage, and they can run out, and that can hold things over for them. Whereas somebody else could be in a situation whereby they have everything ready, and then that can get the other person ahead of you in the bidding process. And you can miss out. So make sure your mortgage approval that you have is in date still.
Absolutely.
The sale, when I mentioned there about selling fast, just explain something that a lot of people are texting in about here. It's regarding the sale agreed, whereas the sale agreed's on the sign outside, but the house isn't sold yet. Just the difference there, is that to do with paperwork? Is that the main reason?
I suppose the main thing really is when a property goes sale agreed and before it goes sold is really the amount of time it takes to prepare a contract. And that's down to paperwork, the legal system. But my advice to anyone thinking of selling is to get their paperwork in order at the early stage. So liaise with your solicitor, and they'll give you a list of what documents you need. They'll have to request your title deeds and make sure planning is in compliance, etc. So if there was anything wrong, take for example, if somebody built an extension to their home, to the side of their home, and they didn't get planning at the time. Okay, the time may have lapsed now, but when you go to sell your property, you'll actually have to go back and get retention, and that can take months and months. So slowing down the process. So it's always important, and your estate agent will be able to advise you on this when they go out and look at your property. What they'll identify, have you got your boundaries in order, what compliance you need, and it'll be a case of liaising with your solicitor and your engineer.
And then for those people who are selling, as you mentioned there, maybe they're downsizing or maybe they're just unsure of selling, but they also need to purchase elsewhere. Would you say put your own house up for sale first? Because I presume you don't have to take every offer you receive, because you could have a situation whereby you see your dream house, but your own hasn't sold.
Yes. I think one of the biggest issues, particularly in the second-hand market, is I speak to people every day of the week and they say they're thinking of selling their property, but they're afraid to put it on the market. So they're sitting on the fence because there's a lack of alternative stock available there. But the problem is when they do find a property they want, and if they haven't their property in the market, their offer won't be taken seriously. So they're going to miss out on their property. So my advice is to put your property on the market, and you have to realise that you don't have to accept the offer. And also I'd like to remind vendors that they can set the terms of the contract in relation to closing dates. And I suppose a tip for buyers really also in relation to this is if they're more flexible with closing dates with vendors, that's also going to be a strong point when they're going with an offer.
And when you are selling, and you mentioned there about having everything in order legal-wise and your boundaries and everything like that, looking at the house itself, make sure it's presentable and looking at the interiors and the outside of the house so it looks practical and it looks on a selling point, like you would go into a shop to buy any item, that it will grab attention. Because a lot of people these days, I presume, are looking on the likes of Daft and your own DMG websites for a new home.
Yes, that's very true. And I always say, first impressions are so important. It can be even down to things like the photographs, make sure they're looking well. But I think, some people think that before a viewing, they'll do a big clean-up. When your property is on the market, it needs to be clean inside and outside all the time. Because the amount of buyers, they'll look at it on the internet, but they'll drive past before they'll book a viewing. So you need to have the curb appeal on the outside. Very, very well done.
So they'll look at the area, I suppose, around the house as well before they'll commit to looking at a house or ringing you guys. And for selling at the moment, what is the second-hand sales market like in Ireland?
So it's very, very competitive for buyers, quite simply because the stock is one of the lowest in years. So I suppose, if we put up a property there, you're going to be flooded with inquiries and then bidding wars start.
And as we mentioned earlier, the sales are happening fast. The reason I mentioned about second-hand sales there is Paul has been in touch. Now, he is a first-time buyer, but he's unsure what to do. Himself and his partner, they're looking to buy a new home because they think the new homes have better energy ratings, but the new homes are so expensive in the Cork area. He's looking at 425 to 450,000. God, that's a huge amount for a 3-bed house. Yeah. I presume in the suburb areas you're looking. Well, it could be anywhere really these days. I mean, a lot of the county towns are commuter routes now as well. But he says, should they now look at the second-hand market for better value if prices are high on new builds, but they are concerned about the energy ratings because they feel they can get grants for that?
I suppose first-time buyers, a lot of the majority of them are going for the new builds purely because they can get the Help to Buy scheme, and obviously the energy rating is very important and sustainable for the future. But I think, at times we need to look outside the box, and maybe it's time to look at a more affordable option. So, for example, that may mean a lower energy rating in a second-hand house, because there are lots of grants available and you can improve your rating over time. Because I always say, JohnPaul, that, a home is for life. You can be working over time. It doesn't have to be perfect from the start.
Yeah, and you're always, if any homeowners tuned to us will always know that you're never finished with your house. Once you buy it, you'll always be touching something up in the house over the number of years, no matter how long you own it. And for the likes of Paul now, who is obviously looking to buy and is realising that the prices are just going up for the new homes, I mean, would you suggest to him and others not to put everything on just one house and to look at a range of areas? Because a lot of people would want to maybe buy near a workplace or in a commuter town, but maybe diversify in where you think you can get better value for money.
Yes, I think, buying a home is a very emotional process, and you can get so attached to, you see your dream home. But you need to have kind of a walk away clause if it goes over your budget. So I suppose my advice really would be absolutely, JohnPaul, to widen your search. With hybrid working continuing, we can, we don't have to be near the cities and towns. So the further you go out, the greater affordability. And the other thing, as I say, is, looking beyond the new builds. And a very important thing that a lot of buyers don't know is that not all the properties hit the portal. So it's very important to register your interest with your estate agent, because they will be, like, we had a number of properties in the past few months that sold off market. So the owner didn't want it to go out in the open market, but they simply came and said, if you have a buyer for this property, we're interested. So in that case, we emailed all the buyers that were listed in our database, and they got the option of viewing the property.
Oh, that's interesting. So if you're looking for your dream home on Daft or one of those websites, it might not be there if the seller doesn't want it to make it public, but then they'll go directly to you and you will let people know. So register with whoever your local estate agent, or a number of them, I suppose, really, so that you get these in.
Absolutely.
Okay, very finally, Majella, a question here from a person on WhatsApp who says, good morning, JohnPaul, and good morning, Majella. I have a second house, which was our starter home. Now, I would love to sell this, but would have to pay way too much tax if I was to sell it. So I really don't know what to do with this second house. Any ideas?
Yes, I think a lot of people are in that situation as well. But the important thing to remember there is, to speak to your tax consultant and your accountant. But there are a number of things like that you can take off. So, for example, any work you did over the years there, that can all be deducted from your tax amount.
Okay, Majella, well, guys, there for anybody who is in that situation of purchasing or indeed selling a home at the moment. Best of luck to everybody who's contacted us looking to find their dream home. Hopefully it does work out for you. And Majella, thanks to you for joining us this morning on the programme.
Thank you, JohnPaul.
Take care. That is Majella Galvin there, a chartered estate agent and valuer at DMG Galvin in Bandon.